God, yes. I used to have an awful roommate, but we were friends at the time, and she had an awful boyfriend. Roommate and I were planning on trying mescaline plus 2CB for the first time when he was at work. Well, he ended up not going to work, and even though I wanted to reschedule, my roommate insisted we still do it, and I agreed. Her boyfriend got super fucking drunk and started playing a super violent horror video game with the volume up. We asked him to stop, and he just turned it up and laughed maniacally. Eventually, my roommate just turned off the TV, and he started screaming at us. Then he told us if we were going to be like that, he would just kill himself and locked himself in the bathroom. Eventually, he came out and was still really aggressive and told us to go get in his car with him. He was still drunk and we shouldn't have, but we did because we were scared of him and tripping. So he drove off, and we ended up in some random parking lot where he started doing donuts and kept jumping over the curb. Eventually, he drove us to a park on the edge of a woods-like area. He wanted to go walk around in the trees, so we did. Well, it was muddy because it had rained recently, and he was wearing new shoes, so he was pissed. Even though it was his idea, he took off his muddy shoes and threw them at me. Then he drove us all home without his shoes, and when he sobered up, blamed me and tried to make me buy him new shoes. Oh, but before that, he literally ran out the front door barefoot and shirtless, and my roommate chased after him and left me alone to freak out. It was 10,010 terrible, horrifying experience. And I know it probably sounds like my roommate was a victim here too, but I promise you she was awful. She literally stalked her boyfriend and played mind games with him. She openly manipulated people because she thought it was funny, and when her boyfriend eventually assaulted me and I pressed charges, she took his side and made up a story to try to make it seem like I attacked him. We'd been friends for 14 years. I was a 21-year-old, 115 lb female who has never in my life been in a fight. Oh, and I introduced them. One of the smallest yet biggest mistakes of my life. It's been 7 years, still not over it. Back in high school, I had my then BF over to trip-sit me while I did some shrooms. Parents were out of town. He didn't want to trip. A few hours in, my then best friend wanted to come hang too. I thought that was a great idea. Two of my favorite PPL hanging out while I trip balls. While I was busy being entertained by a staircase, they were hooking up on the couch upstairs. I heard noises and knew what was going on. They definitely knew what they were doing too. Ruined the fucking trip, and I haven't done shrooms since. Also, he ended up dumping me for her anyway a month later. Took mushrooms. Agreed to give my friends a ride once the trip was over, like 3 a.m. super late. The fuckers showed up hammered around 11 p.m. at the very end of the trip. One of them busted in on my other bro when they heard he was having a bad trip. Thankfully, he was doing a lot better at the time, but still. And their presence caused my trip to turn. Nothing terrible, I just stopped enjoying it and needed the visuals to end. I was puking in the bathroom and complaining about the toilet paper melting. To say I was pissed off and disappointed in them would be an understatement. We should have locked the door and told them to fuck off. Drunk people are the enemy of a nice trip. This was years ago, so I'm kind of guessing at the timeline. My ex never tripped with me, but didn't mind if I did so one time about 15 minutes after I dropped. She wanted to go out to a bar with her girlfriends, and while it was already a point of contention between us, I figured I'd have a better trip if she was gone. Then while I'm peeking, she comes back with 2 guys she says she brought for her friend she went with, and they tried to act all gangster and talk about how they used to shoot people with BB guns, which bugged me a little bit, but not too badly. But while the 2 guys were talking to the other chick, my ex decided she wanted to wax me to get some of my chest hair off because I'm a pretty hairy dude and I was tripping balls, so I said sure. When she started pulling it off, I noticed she wasn't watching the hair, she was staring at my face, and I realized the only reason she wanted to wax me in the first place was because she wanted to see me in physical pain while I was tripping. We broke up less than a month later after I had really taken a look into the fact she just wanted to cause me pain for pain's sake. Last year, a couple of friends and I went tubing down a local river and had planned to spend most of the day there. As soon as we got there, we dropped except my roommate at the time or so called trip sitter and hopped on the bus to drop us off. What we didn't take into account is how long the river actually is, and we were done within the hour. But as soon as we started walking back to the car, everything was melting. Hot summer rays, crazy sand waves eating all the cars, the whole 9 yards. The sitter has the genius idea to take us to Buc-ee's, and if you know anything about that place, you know it's a trip going in sober. He pulls up and wrangles us inside to the busiest I've ever seen this place, and at this point I was peaking. If you have ever seen how Japan is portrayed in movies and games as this bright arcade-like city, it was just like that except with the beavers everywhere. I was looking all doe-eyed and internally flipping out because of the sheer volume of people. This place has like 50 gas pumps, so you can imagine all the families there, lol. I couldn't even manage to speak to the cashier to buy my Dippin' Dots because I couldn't understand anyone, and my roommate is just laughing his ass off as I'm tweaking in front of everyone. Fuck him for putting me through that, but I always look back on it and think how fun it was with my friends. This didn't happen to me, but it's the most fucked up story I've heard related to this. Had a friend group in high school, and 3 of them tripped together. We will call them B, D, and K. I heard that during most of the trip, B would throw blankets over his head and make scary noises, and backwards crab walk towards D. They were all pretty close, and K was just chilling, but I can't guess why B and D don't talk anymore. I had a friend like 4 months ago that we weren't the best, but we hang out a lot lately, and we've known each other for years. Case is, once day I was on acid, and he called me to hang out, and I told him where I was because I trusted him a little. Later he showed up and had the brilliant idea that since I was on acid, he could do whatever he wanted, and thought that I wouldn't remember a thing. He started asking questions about mistakes I made in the past. He started questioning everything I did in a negative manner. He threw a homemade pizza I made for another friend's birthday. He also slapped me in the face and kept being rude whole night. The next day, I told him he was the greatest asshole known to man, since I did remember everything perfectly, and he should have not done anything he did that night. He refused to apologize, so I blocked him on every social media and still hate him to this day. I found him once in the street, and he tried to blame it on me having a bad trip, and that I imagined the whole thing, so that confirmed he was a very bad friend in all form of manners. I was tripping hard as fuck with 2 friends in a dorm room, and while we were out fucking around, a third guy who knew we were tripping hid in the closet and covered himself in clothes and stuff so we couldn't see him. Then when we came back, he must have stayed there for like an hour before he started making little noises. I went and checked it out, and I swear to God I couldn't see him in there at all, since everything just sort of melded together with the visuals. Then he kept making noises, and one of my other pals went over and just kicked the shit out of the pile of clothes. Not great vibes.